He only wanted a quiet meal, nothing more. But in a crowded restaurant, four men turned an evening into chaos, attacking with arrogance and cruelty. To them, the young black teen standing nearby was invisible, unimportant, just another face to dismiss. Yet what they didn't know would stop them cold. Because this wasn't just an attack on a billionaire. It was the beginning of a revelation that would shatter their assumptions and expose a truth they never saw coming. Who was this teen? And why did his presence change everything? It was supposed to be an ordinary night out. The billionaire, known for his quiet generosity, chose a small corner table at a bustling restaurant, far from the spotlight his wealth usually attracted. In the same space sat a black teenager, unnoticed by most, finishing a modest meal. To others, he was just another kid, quiet, reserved, and out of place in such a polished setting. Yet beneath that calm surface lay a story no one in the room could have guessed. Two very different lives had crossed paths by chance. What none of them knew was that this ordinary evening would soon unravel into a storm of violence, prejudice, and a shocking revelation that would silence the entire restaurant. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and the clinking of glasses, but at one table, unease began to grow. Four men walked in, loud, aggressive, scanning the room as if they owned it. Their eyes landed on the billionaire and whispers turned to smirks. To them, he wasn't a man enjoying dinner. He was a target. And the presence of a black teen a few tables away only added fuel to their prejudice. They saw him as out of place, someone who didn't belong, someone easy to ignore or ridicule. At first, the men's taunts were subtle, a laugh too loud, a comment muttered just within earshot. But soon, their hostility became impossible to hide. They shoved past the teen as if he were invisible, making sure their words cut deep. Every insult was laced with arrogance, every glance filled with the quiet venom of racism. The teen kept his head down, pretending not to notice, but his chest tightened with each word. He knew this wasn't just teasing, it was a warning. Then, the moment came. One of the men stood, knocking his chair back with a crash, and marched straight to the billionaire's table. The restaurant fell silent. Without hesitation, the others followed, circling like predators. Voices rose, the insults turned into shouts, the shouts into threats. Plates rattled on tables, forks froze mid-air, and in the middle of it all, the black teen sat frozen, not from fear, but from the weight of choice. He could stay silent, like he always had when faced with prejudice, fading into the background. Or he could act, stepping into a storm that was bigger than him, a storm that could destroy everything, or reveal who he truly was. The men lunged, chairs toppled, screams echoed. The billionaire staggered back as fists swung, glass shattered, and chaos erupted. But in that split second, before the violence could go further, all eyes turned toward the teen. What he did next would not only stop the room cold, it would expose a truth powerful enough to silence even the loudest hate. And no one, least of all those four men, was prepared for it. The restaurant was in chaos. Shattered glass crunched beneath heavy boots as the four men tightened their circle around the billionaire. Their rage wasn't just about money or power. It was about dominance, about proving they could humiliate someone in front of everyone. And in the center of it all, the black teen rose slowly from his chair. For a moment, the room seemed frozen. Eyes followed him with disbelief. To the attackers, he was nothing, just a kid. But as he stepped forward, calm yet unshaken, something in his presence demanded attention. The billionaire's eyes widened, not in fear, but in recognition. This wasn't just any teenager. He was someone the world had overlooked, someone whose story carried weight far beyond this room. The men sneered, shouting slurs, daring him to intervene. One lunged, grabbing the teen's arm with force meant to crush. But in that instant, everything changed. The teen didn't flinch. He stood tall, his voice steady, his gaze locked. The weight of history, the countless moments of silence, the endless years of being underestimated seemed to pour into that single second. And then the truth surfaced. Phones lifted, cameras flashed, and whispers shot through the crowd. The teen's identity wasn't just a name, it was a revelation that shattered the attacker's arrogance. They froze, their fists suspended mid-air, their faces pale with shock, because the boy they thought was powerless wasn't powerless at all. He was the reason the billionaire was there. He was the connection, the legacy, the story that tied every eye in that room to a larger truth about injustice and resilience. The air grew heavy. The attacker's strength dissolved into silence, and for the first time, the entire room understood. What stood before them was not just a teenager, but a reckoning. The room fell into silence. The four men, once bold and unshaken, now stood paralyzed, their arrogance stripped away. The black teen, who had been invisible moments before, was no longer unseen. His presence, his truth, had shifted the balance. Security rushed in, the attackers were removed, and the billionaire, still shaken, placed a hand on the teen's shoulder, a quiet acknowledgement of who he really was and what he represented. But the story didn't end with the men being escorted out. The real impact was in the whispers that rippled through the restaurant, in the phones still recording, in the faces that carried both shame and realization. For too long, people like him had been overlooked, underestimated, pushed to the margins. And in that single night, the world was forced to confront what happens when prejudice collides with truth. The teen walked away with more than just dignity intact. He walked away having revealed the deep cracks in how society sees young black lives. This wasn't just about a restaurant fight or a billionaire saved. It was about something larger, the injustice that hides in plain sight, waiting for moments like this to expose it. Because racism doesn't always announce itself with sirens, it creeps in through looks, whispers, and the quiet belief that some lives matter less than others. But when the truth surfaces, when someone dares to stand tall, the world has no choice but to listen. The question is, will we listen now, or will we wait until another story forces us to face it again?